Does encountering skilled builders leave you tilted? Then you need to learn to box fight. These techniques will help you defend, confuse, and find openings that you can use to win more matches. So let's start at the basics and build up towards the ultimate techniques that you need to know. And also later, we have a special announcement for you all, so stay tuned. So the most important fundamental in box fighting is, well, the box. This box is more than your method of defense. As long as it stays up and you control the pieces, you can dominate any opponent that comes your way. However, boxes are more than just builds in this situation. It's also the ultimate goal you and your opponent are striving to take control of. Here's a quick and simple rundown of how boxes are used in Fortnite. You can defend yourself using a box, protecting you from enemy fire or giving you time to heal. You can build a box around your opponent to keep them from moving around. It also cuts them off from any building until they clear the way. Finally, whether you're outside a box or inside one, you will be trying your best to edit your box in ways you can use to your advantage, whether it be opening a peek or getting out of harm's way. Now, let's get you in shape and teach you some techniques to get you started. If you want to join this awesome giveaway, just make sure you subscribe to our channel and have a ProGuide subscription. New and existing subscribers are both welcome. To enter, simply click the link below, locate your ProGuides username, and leave it in the comment section. Stay tuned as we'll reveal the lucky winner later this week. One thing newer players tend to do is build some walls around them if they take damage. This is a good instinct to have, but sometimes you'll only build in the direction of the gunfire. Try to make it a habit to always build a full box. Once it's up, how do you defend? The obvious answer is to keep your opponent from claiming your walls and open up a window wherever you can to blast your opponent. However, most box fights involve more than a single box, and the longer the box fight lasts, the more builds will be made as you fight for supremacy. One strategy you need to start using is building a double box at the start of a fight. If you own two boxes connected to each other, you give yourself more room to move around in the event that your opponent manages to get into one. Boxes are meant to slow your opponent down and force them to use resources. You can also use multiple boxes to keep your opponent guessing at your location. One good tactic you need to start adopting as a beginner is swapping out your medkits for floppers. Floppers are some of the fastest healing methods in the game, and in a box fight can restore your health fast enough to keep up with the pace of the fight. Healing in the middle of a fight doesn't just improve your chances of survival, but can be used to confuse your opponent. Most players are encouraged to keep count of their opponent's health by keeping track of how much damage they've dealt. However, most players do this as a way to know when to rush you for game. Healing throws off their count and can cause your opponents to rush you if they think they have enough ammo to get you to zero. Finally, one of the biggest mistakes you can make is when you switch from defensive maneuvers to offensive maneuvers. Perhaps you feel like now is the right time to edit a peek, but instead you get blasted. What happened? Well, what you did wrong is simple. You edited while standing directly in front of the opening. If you want to use your edits to take shots but keep defenses, stop confirming your edit before you reach cover. Get to the cover first, then confirm. Or if you want to be less obvious, just make sure your opponent can't see you from the angle of the edit. Now for the question of the day. What's one edit you're having the most trouble with? Let us know in the comment section below, and perhaps you'll see it pop up in one of our videos. Using your box to fight or trying to fight an opponent in a box can seem tricky, but a lot of it relies on confidence, observation, and patience. It also requires you to know which weapon is optimal in different situations. So let's take a look at some weapons first. If you are box fighting, shotguns are best used immediately after an edit to take away as much health from your opponent as possible. SMGs should be used to deal damage to different walls or even punch through them and chip away at your opponent's health. SMGs aren't always going to be the game ender, but can deal enough damage to apply pressure and put your opponent on the defensive. Pickaxing your opponent's wall is a great way to weaken it before punching through with an SMG. Snipers are not that good in a box fight once it begins. However, if you can get a good shot in before engaging, you can tilt the fight in your favor. ARs can be used in box fights, but they don't deal massive damage unless you get a good beam when opening a fight. However, unlike the sniper, you can still use this to smack different walls from a distance and keep your opponent guessing. However, if you want to punch through a wall at closer range, switch to the SMG since you need the increased fire rate to chip your opponent. Usually, box fights will begin the moment either you or your opponent does damage to each other. If you hit your opponent and they box up, now is your chance to apply pressure. Keep firing at different walls to keep their focus away from healing. Your opponent won't know which wall you plan to take down, and they'll be forced to focus only on you. If you do this though, don't forget to reload. One thing a lot of beginners do when learning how to box fight is rush their opponents once they get a few good hits in on the box. You're mainly focused on getting the box out of the way as fast as possible, but in reality, this is a mistake. A good opponent will be watching your movements, and if they picked up some box fighting techniques, they'll be able to predict where you're coming in from and and get the perfect angle on you. So even if you think you're being slick, they'll be able to take you down quickly. Becoming better at observation can help you predict your opponent's movements, which can help you decide where to place your next piece or make an edit. It can also give you a heads up whenever your opponent tries to get a peek on you. One great way to improve your box fighting techniques is to VOD review. If you got into a good fight during a match, you can go back to it from the main menu by visiting the Combat Records tab. Here you will find some of your previous matches saved and you can view them all at your leisure. These recordings will not only allow you to watch the previous match, but it will also indicate where on the timeline you got eliminations or got eliminated. You can also move your camera around to get a better look at the area as a whole or zoom in on a specific opponent. This is a great tool because if you lost, you can see the movements your opponent made to prepare for your failed attack. Perhaps he pulled his blueprints out at the right moment, or maybe he used movement to throw you off. Watching this in slow motion can help you spot the important details you need to look out for during future matches. So if an opponent ever tries to counter you with the same techniques, you have an easier time predicting them and countering the counter. Now let's talk about some editing techniques every beginner should know. If you're at least somewhat familiar to Fortnite, then you've probably already seen players open windows and take shots. While this is essential, it is also one of the more basic techniques and is not always the only thing you should do if you manage to get a window open. As we mentioned earlier, getting a box around your opponent is a great way to trap them. However, you can also trap your opponent with stairs. Say you open up a window but your opponent is being careless, you can place a stair piece inside their box to pin them against their own wall. You can also do this if your opponent is attacking your box. The stairs will create an extra layer to get around and will force your opponent to get a different angle. You can use this to corral them in directions you want them to go. The final tip for editing is you need to learn to reset edits. Doing this allows you to open a peek, take a shot, and close the hole in the wall so your opponent can't retaliate. One of the most essential techniques any beginner should know is how to phase into your opponent's box. When you're trying to get into a box, your opponent is constantly going to be defending. So being able to bring a wall down and enter the box is essential for catching them by surprise and going for game. Some players will damage the roof in the box, then drop down and swing their pickaxe for that last bit of health. This allows them to enter the box before the opponent has a chance to seal up the hole. Other players will attempt to use cones to build up momentum they can use to slide, take down the wall, and zoom past their opponent before they repair. Before we move on, don't forget to visit ProGuides.com for a chance at 5,000 V-Bucks. If you manage to get inside an opponent's box, then you better be ready for some close quarters combat. This is where beginners will either succeed or fail depending on their confidence. Yes, getting close can leave you open to getting pumped, but if you learn to strafe properly, you won't need to panic at the last minute. If possible, always start with a hit from your shotgun, then swap out to your weapons with faster rates of fire and try to move around your opponent. You're so close that ARs will be difficult to aim, and if you move fast enough, your opponent will have a hard time focusing that pump shot on you. Be sure to keep firing while strafing to apply even more pressure, which can throw them off and make their attempts at aiming unfocused. Alrighty then, do you feel like you're ready for a real box fight? If you feel like this video helped you, leave a like and ring that bell and we'll keep you up to date with new tips and tricks.